All right, so here's the thing with Lizzo and the flute. I did make a point earlier that I was not offended, but that the only reason I was not offended is because I'm not very patriotic. I do not have a tear running down my cheek, a single American tear, when I think of the sacred, founding fathers of our country. Like, it just doesn't, it's not like that for me. So I wasn't like, James Madison's crystal flute, how could you, Lizzo? But my point was that if I did feel that way, that I would feel like it was disrespectful because, like, what, oh my God, she went up and played a couple notes and shook her butt around, and what the heck? Her scantily clad butt. But I guess here's the thing. The Library of Congress, you might expect that they would have released this flute, they would have found a classical flautist, a world-renowned flautist that plays in a classical orchestra, and they would have gone to some event, some big orchestral event that was mostly only being watched by very wealthy people, all wearing very fancy formal clothing, very hoity-toity, and some guy would come out wearing a tuxedo saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, I have a very special treat for you. We have James Madison's priceless, one-of-a-kind crystal flute. It's 200 years old, has never been played, but this evening we're going to make history, and the great Dostoevsky Chaskyevsky is going to play the flute here. He's going to play a classical piece that we all know and love called Tchaikovsky's Third Movement in G minor, and it's gonna be like, I'm being like a ding-a-ling right now, but you get the idea. Like, we would expect that that's what would happen, but you know what? The Library of Congress didn't want to do that. They wanted Lizzo to do it. They wanted for this to make some noise, for this not to be this quiet little thing that happened that only the elites knew about or cared about. They wanted it to be Lizzo because she is Lizzo, because she's hot right now, because everybody knows who she is, because everybody is cheering her to shake her butt. And like, in a minute, I'm gonna need a sentimental man, a woman to pump me up. They wanted to make some noise about this. They wanted people to know about this artifact, for this to be given center stage for a minute in this country, and now it has. Mission accomplished. Some people like it, some people don't. But now, I swear, a week ago, if you talked to almost anyone in America and said, who was the fourth president of the United States, just like regular Joe Schmoes on the street, or Jane Doe's, or who is often credited as the father of the Constitution, I bet not many people would know that's James Madison. Or even if you just asked anyone who's James Madison, a lot of us wouldn't know. I had to Google it. I couldn't remember who James Madison was. I'm sure I learned it at some point. The name sounded familiar. I was like, who's that again? What? I had to look it up. Oh, okay. Right. He's fourth president. Okay. But and a lot of these outraged people didn't know who he was either, I'm sure, but they do now. And mission accomplished. We made some noise. We elevated this artifact up. And even if people knew who James Madison was, they didn't know that this flute exists. People didn't know about the crystal flute of James. Oh yes, James Madison's famous crystal flute, of course, yes. Like, what are you talking about? The Library of Congress maintains these artifacts and keeps them in good condition, and they care about them, and they were like, you know what? We want the world to pay attention to this flute for a damn minute. Let's make a thing about it. And it worked, and now we're all talking about it. And guess what? Lizzo was just doing what she does, what she always does. You know what I mean? She was just being Lizzo. She wasn't like crapping on the flute or anything like that. She thought it was cool that she got to play it. She was like, "Oh my God, we made history!" Like, you could tell she was like, "I can't believe." And you could tell the way she was holding it. She was like, "I cannot drop this flute. This is an important thing." I hadn't even thought previously, because I'm a white guy and I don't always think of these things, of the racial aspect of this as well, that like the importance that a black woman was the person who was allowed to hold this 200-year-old flute owned by James Madison. There was a time in this country when, of course, it would not be that. Of course, it's going to be some white person, probably a white man, holding this. And instead, it's someone that represents some other things that got to do this. And I think that's pretty cool. But yeah, I bet if there was like some guitar that happened to be owned by like I don't know, Abe Lincoln or somebody, and you gave it to, back in 1985, you gave that guitar to, temporarily to, oh my God, I can't think of his name. My brain's not working. But you know, the boss. Uh, Born in the USA. That guy. I don't know why my brain is. The comments are going to be like, dude, you couldn't think of that name. But my brain. But the point is, if he, let's say we gave like some historical guitar that nobody had ever heard of to that guy, and he went up on the stage and he had that red rag hanging out of his back jean pocket, and he did. He turned his back to the audience and played a few chords and like ding, 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 did that with his butt. I bet people would cheer and think it was awesome, and you wouldn't get too many people. You'd get some people thinking it was disrespectful, but I bet most people would just be like, this is like a great moment of rock history, man. Like the modern rock makes the classical stuff, man, or whatever. Like, he took this classical guitar and played it in a modern style, and it was cool, and like nobody'd be like, but the butt. Like, it's 2023. We're not shooting Elvis Presley from the waist up anymore. Scantily clad women shaking their butts is just kind of not like a big deal anymore, and you know, to most of us. And so maybe really this shouldn't be shocking, you know. Maybe it was just shocking because it was Lizzo, and people don't like that, like somebody that's fat is shaking their butt. But guess what? Fat people can shake their butt too. And also other stuff is at play, and I think racial stuff is at play, and other things that are, I'm not saying everyone that didn't like this is like, you're a racist, but you know, I'm just saying all these things are playing into why there's like this conservative, mostly, outrage at this. And you know what? I think it's, upon further thought, I think it's totally unwarranted, even if you do hold the flute to be a sacred object of a sort. It's still just kind of like, nobody's disrespecting the flute. That's not what's happening. They elevated it. They put it on center stage where we're all talking about it, which was the point. And now a lot of Americans know a little bit more about history than they did, because maybe they did look up James Madison to see what was the deal with this flute, you know? So, bravo, Lizzo and Library of Congress, for bringing us all this little moment in modern history.